Welcome to the show, Gareth here. We have a very special guest this time around. This individual had a remarkable career. He started off in very humble circumstances and went on to lead one of the biggest data center companies in the world. And the story in between is quite inspirational and very entertaining. We then move on to the coronavirus situation and the situation we're all in, which he offers some advice on, and we cover some really interesting ground around this. A really thought-provoking and value-filled interview. I hope you enjoy it. It's Tobin OBE. Michael, thank you for coming on the show. Really pleased to get you on, really excited to talk to you. And you've got an amazing story to tell. I first came across yourself on another podcast that I listened to that you were a guest on probably about a year ago. I obviously knew Telecity. I've done some recruitment for them in the past, back years ago.
Have you? Gosh, excellent.
Yeah, so I knew of Telecity, I knew about the organisation and stuff. I kind of wondered what happened to them, and then obviously I listened to the podcast and things, and they kind of filled that gap in. But obviously I was more drawn to your story. I was more drawn to the journey you've been on, which I thought was fascinating. And then when I found out what you were doing more recently, and we can talk about this later, I was like, wow, this guy's like a bionic man. So basically, so we can cover that as well. So tell us about your journey then from sort of, I know you grew up overseas in Zimbabwe, was it?
Yeah, that's right. So I was born in the East End of London, in Bermondsey, and my father was quite a violent chap. He was one of 9 brothers that were a gang back in the craze time. And he was quite violent to my mother. So when we had a chance to escape back when I was 7 years old, we effectively ran away to Africa. But what we didn't realize was we were going into a country then called Rhodesia, now called Zimbabwe, which is about to start a civil war. So, thinking we were going to escape violence, we ended up walking into the face of it, and we were petrol bombed and shot at many times. One of them actually got me in the leg. But at the age of 12, we managed to get back out of Africa and back to the UK, and they took everything from us at the airport as we were leaving, literally all our clothes, our luggage, our jewellery, our money, everything. And basically we came back to the UK as refugees coming back into our own country. So we ended up living in a squat in Stockwell in London for 2 years, and we survived by... we were a condemned house in a row, and we would break into the other condemned houses waiting for demolition and find things that people left that they didn't want. And mainly people would leave upright pianos, and we would tune the pianos up and roll them down the Old Kent Road and sell them for £20 each in East Street Market. So that's how we kind of survived for a couple of years. And then I got an apprenticeship as a electronic engineer at the age of 16. I left school and got the apprenticeship with a company called Rockwell. And I used to repair robots and industrial robots. These are things that sort of automate packaging, make decisions on sort of production lines, that sort of stuff. And used to sit there with an oscilloscope and circuit diagrams and change chips. When back in the day, when you change chips, and now you just throw boards away. But in those days, the boards were expensive, and you changed the chips. So then managed to get punching above my weight. Always applied for jobs that I knew that I had no experience at, and I was always sort of pushing my own boundaries and assuming that I could learn how to do it on the job. And managed to get a role in a French computer company's UK subsidiary in Putney in London, and then again was very lucky because I just started there as a technical director, believe it or not, at the tender age of about 20. And I was flicking through the yellow pages because there wasn't anything to be technical about. I hadn't sold anything. So I found the name of a computer reseller actually in I think it was Baglan in Wales, actually. Can't be far away from you.
Too far.
And basically they used to sell the Commodore 64 and the and the old the BBC computers, and they were looking for a new range. And I just phoned them up out the blue, started chatting to them, and they placed an order for 100 units. Now, this caused complete panic in France because they'd never sold any English units before, and they didn't know how to build a QWERTY keyboard. So just at that point, my CEO at that time sadly had a heart attack. He survived, but he couldn't carry on working. And they said, well, rather than go through a recruiting process, why don't we get this guy who seems to be doing great things to be CEO? So at the tender age of 21, I became MD at the first instance. And of course, I made all the mistakes of trying to run a company with slamming the desk and screaming at people and all those sorts of things, which don't really work. But that was my fast learning curve.
So how big is this company, Michael, that you obviously got to sort of the pinnacle of so quickly? How big was the operation?
Oh, it was fairly small. I mean, it was only a few people when I joined, but because of the fact that we'd got that deal with a reseller, a distributor, and then I acquired another company very quickly that were in the space of CAD/CAM, because these computers weren't particularly cheap, but they were quite good. But trying to compete against, back in the day, the IBMs, the Compaqs, which obviously don't exist anymore, but those days it was very tough. So you had to have sort of themes. So we acquired a reseller of CAD/CAM solutions where the computer was simply an element in the overall solution, so that you could put people didn't care what the computer was in the middle of it. They wanted to buy the entire solution. So acquiring a sort of a systems integrator that did that was a way to get out of the sort of trap of nobody knowing who you are, and therefore you don't sell, and therefore nobody knows who you are, and therefore you don't sell. So this was a way to fix that, and it was very successful. And the French headquarters decided to bring me over to France and kind of ask me to do the same thing in other countries, other subsidiaries, even though I had no experience in anything outside the UK anyway, and I probably was doing more by luck than judgment. But and then the French company decided to go in different ways, and I said, okay, I'm going to stay in Paris, and got a job with a UK company that was looking for a business development person. Couldn't speak a word of French, but stayed there, and ended up staying 11 years in France, setting up businesses across Europe. Went to Copenhagen, where my eldest daughter was born. Turned around a managed service company there for a company called ICL, which was the old IBM of Britain, and then went to Frankfurt, where my son was born, and set up Fujitsu's e-business operations there. And back in sort of 2001, just after 9/11, 2002, I had a 3-year-old and a 1-week-old, and the dot-com bubble exploded on us. And I thought, well, I'll nip back to London and see if I can hunker down there and ride this out. And I didn't do my due diligence properly, and I joined a company called Redbus. And Redbus was a data center company that had listed on the stock exchange, raised £400 million, and promptly spent it. What I didn't know, because I didn't do my due diligence, was that it was burning. It had about £6 million in the bank. The market cap was £6 million. And it was burning 2.4 million a month. So I had about 2.5 months to try and save the company. And again, through a lot of luck, managed to get that done, took it private, relisted it in 2007 for 400 million. And then we sold it in 2015 to the global leader of data centers called Equinix for 3.6 billion. And so a good journey, and a nice return on those 13 years.
Well, you tell your story very seamlessly, Michael. You always tell it before, haven't you? Can I ask you the Redbus thing that turned into Telecity? I take it then, yeah.
Yeah. So we merged when I took it private. We merged Redbus and Telecity together, which were the two kind of European data center operators, and we adopted the name Telecity because it was more synonymous with a data center company than Redbus was. So we then carried on as a combined entity as Telecity, and and the rest was great. I mean, the business went from strength to strength. But again, I'll tell you another sort of example of luck. I'd only been in the company a month, and as I mentioned, it was virtually bankrupt, and I tried to stop all the spend that I possibly could and reduce everything. But data centers are physical places where the internet lives, and that you can't easily just close it down. There's an operating cost and everything else. And one of the things I couldn't stop was the opening of our Prague facility. So I flew out there and opened the facility with the ambassador, the British ambassador to the Czech Republic. And all I could think about, and she was talking about this amazing, British company with technology and exports, and all I could think about was another £250,000 a month burn that this thing was going to create with no customers. And I remember taking off that night back to London, thinking this is just desperate. And it was a very, very dodgy ride. It was like really bumpy and everything. And when I landed back in London, I was looking at the news, and there were storms across Central Europe, and the Danube had burst its banks.
Yeah.
And it was this massive flood in Prague, and our data center became completely flooded. And so I got straight back on the plane and went straight back out and negotiated with the insurers. Our data center was insured for £50 million. And I said to them, give me 8 million now, today, we'll cut a deal and I'm out of here. So they loved it. They saved 40 odd million. I got 8 million, which gave me another 4 or 5 months of life to get new investors. And the reason that it was so successful was because it rained in Prague. So, when people say that, they don't have a lot of luck in their success, don't believe them.
Yeah, that's incredible though. I mean, if it didn't rain that day in Prague, you might have gone.
I'd be nowhere. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you never know. You might have had another stroke of luck somewhere else. But I mean,
it might rain somewhere else instead. But the bottom line is that literally was the reason we were able not to go bankrupt at that time, because it rained.
I've heard a version of this anecdote before. I think that you told somewhere else. But I mean, I was going to say, I think you also went on to say about a 90-10%, in terms of success in your career is 10% graft and 90% luck.
Yeah, it is. It is. And you have to take risks on people. You've got to, so generally, I don't think I've ever employed anyone in my entire life that through their CV.
Yeah.
Now, I've often had people triage people via a CV, but when it comes down to me to make a decision on someone, I've never looked at what people have done. I've only looked at the character that they have, because I'd rather have someone with the right attitude than the right skill set, because I can train a skill set, but it's really, really hard to train attitude. So if you can surround, if you're lucky enough, again, to find a lot of people with the right attitude, then you can create a fantastic team. And that fantastic team allows you to exploit luck, exploit opportunity.
Yeah.
So the most important thing about success in business in all cases is having people with the right attitude around you. And I think when you look at when you look at sort of how the world is, the rate of change, if you like, is getting faster. So what worked yesterday will almost certainly not be the case tomorrow, and probably won't be today. And so how do you, it's not necessarily being as good as you possibly can be at any given time. It's also being as adaptable as you can be at any given time, and taking advantage of scenario that come up. And I think that's what the identifying the luck, right? So you can be more lucky if you're able to flex and take advantage of opportunity.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's what it boils down to. Sorry, can you hear that?
Yep.
Oh yeah, no, don't worry. As I was saying, so I think it's about exploiting opportunity, and I think with the difference between somebody like yourself and somebody who doesn't really progress in their career is the fact that you obviously get the opportunity and capitalize on it and make something of it. Okay.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people don't. They maybe opportunity falls into their lap and they just kind of don't really do anything about it. You know what I mean?
I agree. And one of the main reasons that people don't, in my opinion, is fear, right? And I talk a lot about fear in my books, but fear is like this completely wasted emotion, right?
Yeah.
Because we don't fear the past and we don't fear the present because we're dealing in it, but we fear the future. And we actually apply worst case scenario to the future always. That's why we have this fear of things going wrong. And in reality, right, there's either, if you have a view of the future which you're afraid of, quote unquote, then there's either something you can do about it or there's nothing you can do about it, right? And if there's something you can do about it, you should do it, right? In which case you're not being afraid of it, you're actually dealing with the issue. Or there's nothing you can do about it, in which case why be afraid of it and worry anyway, right? So it's going to happen. So the point is that worry and fear is like paying interest on a debt you haven't drawn. Right?
Yeah.
Because you're not doing anything with the value of the money, you're just paying interest on it. You're just getting the negatives. So having a sort of an approach to the future which says, if I can deal with it, I will deal with it. If I can't deal with it, there's nothing for me to do. Therefore, I just get on with my present and take it as it comes. And this is where I talk a little bit about, in one of my books, about a lesson that I gave my management team at Telecity. That when I told them we were going to merge Telecity and Redbus together, of course, in their eyes, consolidation means 2 people, 1 job, right? And obviously, oh my God, there's going to be redundancies. We're worried. And so I took them up to Scotland, and if on the old Forth Road Bridge across the Firth of Forth, if you go northbound, there's an aquarium in the Firth of Forth. Actually, when you double back on yourself when you come off the bridge, and it's massive. You don't realize you're in an aquarium because it's so big and it's right on the sea. But I took them there and I said 2 by 2, can you please get into your wetsuits, put your breathing apparatus on? And they said, we thought we were coming to a whiskey tasting. And they were very concerned, but they did it. And then I said, please get in the water. And as they started to get in the water, they could see this shark fin in front of them coming towards them. And there were no cages, no nets, and they had to go swimming with sharks. And these were big sharks, proper sharks. And they had to go to the bottom, and they were absolutely petrified. They were swearing at me, but they all did it. And so when they came out, I said to them, look, how did you feel when you realized what you were about to do? When you saw that shark fin in front of you and realized you were in the water with it? And they said, I was absolutely terrified. And I said, okay, well, what were you terrified? Well, because they thought the shark was going to kill me. Okay. So how did you feel when you were on the seabed and the sharks were literally 1 foot away from you, but weren't doing anything? Well, I was still terrified, but it was exciting in a way. And kind of, I was managing the situation. I said, how did you feel when you got out? And they said, well, life-changing experience. I don't want to do it again, but it was a life-changing experience. Amazing. And I'm so happy I did it. I said, well, okay, well, every time you've got a scenario where in front of you, you suddenly fear something that's about to happen. First of all, you're always overestimating the negative, right? Because you didn't get eaten. Secondly, when you're going through it, you're probably going to learn an awful lot about yourself, right? And how you deal with stuff. And thirdly, when you get out of it, you're going to be a better person for all that experience. So these scenarios are simply, if you can project yourself to the end and look back, you'll realize how valuable these, what we call negative situations are. And we shouldn't worry about them. The negatives are simply the barrier between the people that can learn from them and take advantage of them and the people that can't.
Yeah, absolutely. It seems to be that there's not that many people who are prepared to put themselves outside of their comfort zone in order to achieve a bigger goal, like a longer term goal. Do you see what I mean?
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if people like to be, they don't like to walk on what is described as groundless ground, right? So, it's kind of, when you have no foundation to believe something, and yet you believe it still, is when all things are possible, right? And it's not a faith thing; it's a belief in your spirit of determination or your belligerent attitude towards getting things done. Yeah, and all the things that people tell you as to the reasons why something won't work. Yeah, are simply the barriers, the hurdles that once you're over are between you and your competition.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to ask you about this, Michael, but I was trying to bring it in at the right time, and I think this is it. Okay, so you've obviously been in some very high pressure situations. You're clearly somebody who likes to push yourself outside of your comfort zone. You're clearly somebody who likes to capitalize on opportunity. Where does this come from? Are you some sort of stoic you're very stoic and philosophical in the way you talk about things. Where does it intrinsically come from?
I think there's probably something about my upbringing that has given me the ability to continue to drive on and to not accept failure. I don't accept that things can't be done. If I believe they can be done, then I'll, getting knocked down isn't an issue. And when I was at the French computer manufacturer, I happened to, the sales guy was Brian Adams' cousin. The
singer.
Yeah. Which is another story. But basically he taught me he was a very wise sales guy. His name's Ian Watson. And he taught me that, he said, imagine you're a broom salesman, right? And your brooms are kind of, they're a good broom. They're reasonably priced. But you also know, because the broom company is a family company of 150 years old. And so you've got all this data, all the statistics. So, typically you need to knock on 100 different doors before someone buys a broom. That's been the case, and it's tradition, and that's what you're going to have, right? So you come across a terraced road, and the first door you knock on, and out of that terrace road of 100 doors, you've got 98 of them are going to have a broom already. One of them's not going to have a broom but can't afford yours. But one of them is not going to have a broom and can afford yours and is going to buy it, right? So you start knocking on door number one. It doesn't matter where you start. But the first door that opens, you say, hi, I've got a broom. And they go, no, get out of here. Now, instead of being forlorn and upset about that, you go, yes, because you're one step closer to your sale. But by definition, you have to go through 99 no's before you get a yes. We've already established all that. That's the fact. So the quicker you can get through them, the quicker you get your sale. So essentially, looking at a negative as a positive is really, really important, right? So it's undeniable. I mean, here's a question, right? So do you have people in your life that you don't like?
Yeah, I'd say so.
I would say so as well. I reckon most sort of adults have grown up through times of not liking many people, right? And your style and your culture attracts you to certain people and pushes away others, right? So by definition, therefore, there must be millions of people on the planet that probably don't like me. By definition, right? Because there's people I don't like, so forcibly the argument would go the other way. So therefore, if someone doesn't like you, if you're receiving a negative vibe, don't treat that as a bad thing. That's just normal. It's part of life.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
And so looking at things and beating yourself up because somebody says something negative on social media, well, that's their right. We live in an open society, and it would be a really boring world if everybody just was the same and liked each other, and you can get on with people. And there are many times where there were people in my teams that I could see I would choose not to be a friend of, but they were a great team member, right? They would do their job, and obviously as much as possible, I try to bring work and life together. So I like to make sure that the people I'm working with and spending a minimum of a third of my life with, right, that should be people I like and what I call friends, or and my second book talks about how work-life balance doesn't exist and how you have to integrate them to actually be good at both of them rather than try and be good at one at the expense of the other.
Yeah.
But I think every now and again you come across people that don't fit that, but it doesn't mean to say they won't do a good job for you.
I agree. And I have to say as well, it's also a case a lot of the time of not judging people too quickly, because some of the people who I got on best in my working life have been people who I've initially not got along with. But then once you scratch beneath the surface and you generally become friends with these people because you misunderstood them early on, So I think it's...
Well, I think the one thing, and I agree with you there, and I tend to go a lot on gut feeling early on, right? But not rarely. Occasionally, I've been wrong on those first impressions, and I've learned to do exactly what you say there is that you give people a second chance at the very least, and one of the reasons why you change your mind about people is because you learn to trust them. right, and working with them or engaging with them, they do what they say they're going to do. Or they don't do what you initially perceive them to be capable of, or whatever, right? But it ends up with you building trust.
Yeah, certainly.
And that's why, when I recruit people, I'll look at an attitude, because that's all I look at when I have a conversation about the weather, about, anything other than work when I interview someone. And then I just say, can I trust this person, right? And they'll say to me, I have no idea. If I say to them, I want you to do this, they may come back to me and go, like, I have no idea how to do that, but I'll find a way. And then you trust them to do so. And I think that's a really, really important point. So, trusting people's ability to follow through, or their commitment, is far more important to me than buying someone with skills. That's right.
That's what I found anyway.
And loyalty, I think, as well, is really important, right? And again, bearing in mind that work and life are so intertwined. Yeah, I'm working from home at the moment, so I think more and more we're going to realize that work and life is intertwined, and we shouldn't be trying to separate them as two separate things. And therefore, loyalty in our personal lives is really important to us. Well, it should also be loyalty in our business life as well.
Yeah, certainly. So, pulling this into the situation we're in right now, then, there's a lot of disruption going on right now with coronavirus. Businesses are on lockdown. Businesses are, I know us, we've got customers who have just put out all their holds on all their sort of, because we do IT projects and we do recruitment as well, and it's all just gone quiet. And I know a lot of companies in our sector are struggling. I know travel agents, for example, are having to take 50% pay cuts, and some of them are just have to take sabbaticals and things like that. Well, how do you see this playing out over the next month or two? Is this going to take us into a recession?
Yeah, I think it's going to get worse. It's going to get worse before it gets better, right? I mean, the fact of the matter is that I believe that we're highly likely to have a 80+% take up on this. So in other words, almost everybody is going to get some strain of this virus over the next months. And I think that if it's going to take a year for a vaccine, in that year, then everyone's going to get it, and the immune systems are going to kick in, and we're going to build immunity, or the most vulnerable in our communities are going to suffer. And I think both of those things are an inevitability. And just as we've come to terms now with the flu, and I know people are saying it's poo-pooing it to liken it with the flu, but actually, 10,000 people died last year of the flu in the UK. And, that's not an insignificant number. And yet we have a vaccine, which, people can get a flu jab at the beginning of the cold season, and, they can immunize themselves as well. But ultimately we see that as part of life. And this is just another virus that's going to end up just being part of our lives once we build up an immunity to it and everything else.
Yeah.
But in the short term, it's incredibly disruptive. I mean, London at the moment is pretty much empty. And the airlines, I've had four trips cancelled in the last 3 weeks, US, France, Germany, Amsterdam. And for the foreseeable future, I don't see any change in that for the next 2-3 months at least. So these are massive impacts. And the government's just going to have to fund these businesses in some way that's never been done before.
Yeah.
They're going to, and just because it hasn't been done before doesn't mean to say that it can't be done now. They should have the courage to say, this is exceptional times. We will fix it in an exceptional way. So, that's it.
I think it's going to have a knock-on effect to everything, though, isn't it? Because if businesses are not generating money because people can't work and customers are not buying, then people are not going to be able to pay their mortgages. So, because they live paycheck to paycheck. So,
and they're not going to, and they won't have, the government won't have tax income because people will not have jobs because they can't work. This is a very, very significant situation that's not going away anytime soon, and is going to get much worse before it gets better.
Yeah. So, and this is why I thought it was important to tie it in with what you were talking about, Michael, because it is about focusing, surely, and correct me if I'm wrong, so I'm just trying to represent what you were saying, it's about focusing on what's in your control and not getting too stressed about what's out of your control. Yeah.
Correct.
Correct. And I think,
people, if you look at what people can do, we have actually really good systems to allow us working from home now. So, one can study. If it's a situation where you don't have a job, where are you going to find the income? Obviously, there's structures and benefits and things that will probably be more elaborate going forward than they have been in the past. But also take the opportunity, if we can't go out, to use that time at home and take an online course of something, or find something that you can do without just sitting and being unhappy about the situation. Because if there's nothing you can do about the situation, then there's nothing you can do about it, right? Then you just kind of get on and do something else. Some of that sounds very sort of flippant if somebody's listening to this and sort of thinking, well, my job's gone and I don't know how I'm going to eat. That's very, very difficult, right? But there's a significant sort of delta between somebody that's unaffected by this, and very few of us are, or there's someone that's 100% affected by this. There's areas in between where people are suggesting that we work from home, and some people can work from home reasonably efficiently. So there are people in the middle there that I think should just think about it in a different way, and not be so, not panic about it as much as I think we currently are as a community. We're really panicking at the moment.